All right, we're live.
So, welcome to the next lesson. So, we try to make some adjustments with the technology, so hopefully things will work better, hopefully less freezing and less glitches. So, just appreciate your input. Let us know how everything's working along. And thanks everyone for everyone who participated and did the last homework. Which we trade. So, before I forget, before we get started, I don't know if you have Abuna and if you can prepare, I'll give you a few seconds to jump in here today, and then I'd like to share with you.
So, hey, Joe,
Yes.
are you sorry? Oh, sorry, one second. I'm hearing double. So can you speak one more time? Sorry.
Okay. Is it everything working okay now? Is it still
Yeah,
double?
now it's perfect. Sorry, that was my fault.
Okay. So if we can just go ahead and pray, then we can get started. In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not to temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Through Christ Jesus our Lord. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Okay, so we can go ahead and get started here. I'm just going to turn on my screen here. So I'm going to start going over the presentation on my screen. So if you're not seeing the screen when I start talking, please send us some messages so we can make sure that it's working properly. Okay. So we'll just review what we did the previous time. So last time we studied the possessive adjectives. So hopefully everybody can see this here. If you're not seeing it again, please just send us a message so that we can try to fix it. So the possessive adjectives, remember, they're connected to the noun, and we have here the list for the masculine and feminine, and then the plural. And basically they're identical except for just changing the first letter from the P in the masculine, the Tav in the feminine, and the Me in plural. Just like all of the other uh, masculine, feminine, the definite articles, for example. So, just to review kind of what we did last time, because again, I know there was some issues with the video, but for the masculine, remember we're going to group everything into tables, and you're going to see how we're going to continue this theme again today. We've got first person, second person, third person, and we have the singular, and then the plural. So we did pa, pick, pe. Remember that pick is the masculine, pe is feminine, and pith and piss, third person singular, masculine, and feminine again. And then pin, pitten, and pu. And it's going to be the same pattern for the feminine and the plural, just changing again the first letter. So we went over these things last time. So let's go through the homework, and I'm just going to kind of randomly go over some examples. We were supposed to be answering the following questions in Coptic. So the first question here, like nim pe phi. So it could be anything. You could say phi pe Isos. This is Jesus, for example, or phi pe Mina, or anything like that would work. Or again, because it's masculine, so obviously this person is asking, who is this? A masculine person. Nim te thai, again, because this is te and thai are feminine, so obviously they're talking about the who. The who is a female person. So nim te thai, you would say like thai te Maria. This is Maria or Mary, or thai te Tomav. This is my mother. Number 3, nim ne nai. Again, who are these? So this is ne and nai. Remember, it's plural now. So you're saying who are like these people or whatever. Nim means who. So nim ne nai ne na isneu. For example, these are my brothers. Or nai ne na yoti. Yoti is the plural again for father, but you can say in general for parents also. Nai ne na alaoi. That's the plural for children, for example. So there's different ways of saying that. Or nai ne na shiri. These are my sons. Nim pe pairomi. Who is this? Again, it's masculine, and romi means man. So who is this man? You can say fai pe pason. Fai pe pa son, for example, is my brother. Fai pe pason. Nim te taishimi. Who is this woman or this female? You can say thai te tama. This is my mother. Nimne nai alaoi, plural again. Who are these children? Nai ne na isneo. These are my brothers. Or nai ne na sheri. These are my daughters, for example. So you have different options. Again, we're just looking to see if everyone's using the proper usage and not the exact answers I'm giving, but just to give some examples of the proper usage. So remember we talked about also the questions. They'll begin with me. Again, you'll see in 9 out of 10 textbooks it'll just be just a regular question, but technically it's for rhetorical questions only. But for the sake of our learning, we're gonna assume that it's just for any question, and in general starts with me. Me, again, it's a Greek word that introduces rhetorical questions. But the best way to think of it, somebody was asking, like, do you translate it into anything? No. And then someone suggested to think of it as just a question mark, which is actually a pretty good way to think of it. So you don't really translate it, but just think of it as a question mark indicating this is a question sentence. So you would say, mi taisheri te texoni. And what does that mean? So that means question mark, taisheri, this daughter or this young girl, te texoni, is this basically saying, is this daughter your sister, or is this young girl your sister? So you could say, se taisheri te tasoni. Yes, this daughter is my sister. Or you can say, emmun taisheri te tasoni an. I don't think we learned about an yet, but we'll learn that's all. Whenever you're giving a negative, you would say M1 in the beginning and on at the end, but we're going to learn about that later. So let's just assume we're going to answer these in the affirmative instead of the negative. Same thing with this one, mi pai alo pepek shiri. So they're asking question mark, is this boy your brother? You would say se pai alo pepa shiri. Yes, this boy is my brother. Number 9, mi nai ala owine nipisneo. Are these children your brothers? You could say, se nai ala owi nai ala owi ne na isneo. These children are my brothers. And then the last question, number 10, mi ta ishemi titik mav. And remember we have the inflection at the end because these are questions, which means just basically raising your voice at the end. Mi ta ishemi titik mav, se ta ishemi teta mav. That would mean, yes, this woman is my mother. And so that's basically the way to do the last homework. So if anybody has any questions, if you can please send them in. I'm just going to kind of switch screens here for a few seconds. But if you do have any questions, go ahead and send them in while we're switching over here.
So, Joe, we do have one question.
Mm-hmm.
Says the assignment did not show as such. All what it said was to write 5 sentences, 2 of them questions from what you learned. And I checked, and that seems to be the previous homework, demonstrative pronouns and adjectives homework. And it seems there wasn't an actual assignment submission for that last lesson.
Yeah, I think it may not have been put up properly. So, if it wasn't put up, then I guess that's okay. At least we reviewed the exercises for now. If you'd like to do something like that just for your own practice, that would be good. But these are things we're going to be going over again. So I don't know if you can talk with Mark. If possible, we can just put that box there. That way, people can at least try to submit answers, and we won't count it for being late. But if
Okay,
that would be great.
I'll do
Sorry about that. Yeah, we're still trying to get everything fine-tuned, as you know. But hopefully, at least the voice and the graphics and everything. Hopefully, it's working a little bit better than it had been in the past. Because, like I said, we've been trying some new connections and microphones and stuff. So hopefully, this is working a lot better this time. Okay, so that's it for the previous homework. Does anybody if anybody has any questions about the last homework or anything else we've covered up to this point, or just any questions in general, again, feel free to send them in at any time. It's nice to have them submitted while we're live on the air, because then I can answer the questions. But if you're watching this later and it's not live, just go ahead and send me any questions or concerns or comments or anything in the future. So in today's lesson, we're going to be reviewing the simple present tense. So what does the simple present tense mean? That basically means, like in grammar, we talk about, basically we talk about like the past, present, or future. So like the past tense would be like I walked home yesterday or something, for example. So I walked, the verb is in the past tense. This present tense, the future tense would be like I will walk to school tomorrow. Again, because it's something that's going to happen in the future. So we've got the past and the future. But what's the present? It's obviously what's going on right now. So like I walk, like basically saying like I walk or I walk to school or something like that. That's basically the simple present tense. It just means like what is happening at the present time. Like I said, everything is going to fit into this table here. So let me switch over to the table that we have here. So this is the simple present tense. Let me just switch this to English, obviously. So simple present tense. So how do we conjugate verbs in Coptic? It's actually pretty easy. It's much easier than, for example, like in Arabic or where you have to basically like change a large portion of the word. In Coptic, what we're going to do is we're going to attach a prefix to the verb. The verb doesn't change whether it's past, present, future, or whatever. It's not going to change. You're just going to attach a prefix to the verb. So what does that mean? Remember, again, like I said, we're always going to keep referring back to this table with these 6 boxes here for every tense, for all the different categories, all the different things we're going to do. We're going to keep coming back to the same exact box. So remember, we've got the singular category and the plural category. Then the first person, second person, and third person. These 2 are the special ones because remember they're going to have 2 different 2 different possibilities for each one, because when you're talking about the second person or third person singulars, it's gonna make a difference whether it's masculine or feminine. So let's review what these things are. So the first person singular, T, and let's pick a word. So I have some of the verbs here. I'd have to change the fonts here, but let's pick, for example, let's see. Let's just pick read, I guess. That's fine. Read. So read is osh. So these are also prefixed and attached to the verb. So ti osh. Osh means to read. So what does that mean? That means I read. For example, if you want to say like I read the Bible, you would say like ti osh MP Evangelium. Or I read the book, ti osh MP Gom. I read the book. So that's basically you're saying present tense. For the second person, masculine, It's there's one tricky thing about it, and for now, in the beginning, it doesn't make a whole lot of a difference if we don't realize the difference, but over time we will. And this has to do mostly with linguistics. The prefix for the masculine is going to be ek, or it's going to be this other ek, which is kind of like we were talking about before about the linguistics. It's kind of like an aspirated K sound. Is this key? So that's why, like I was saying before, people are asking, like, how do you usually pronounce the Chi? Is it like a SH sound or a K sound? In general, I think in Coptic it was probably mostly pronounced as a key sound, and because it's used again, for example, in the place of K in certain situations. So obviously it's closer to a K sound than anything else. But how do you know which one to use? You'll use this for all letters, the kaba, the kabba, except for you'll use the chi, or the key preceding letters that we'll see this several times. We'll talk about the bil minor group. So we just say bil minor because it's easy just to remember all the letters that we're talking about. Bil minor. And what does that mean? If the verb starts with one of these letters, the bil minor group, you'll use this, the aspirated K sound, which is the key. And aspirated just means like you're saying like the K sound and you're kind of blowing out at the same time you're saying k. If it's any other letter in the alphabet, then you're not going to use the bil minor group. You're going to use just the regular kappa. And we'll see this bil minor group come up every once in a while. So it's actually pretty easy to remember. You just remember bil minor, and then that helps you remember which letters are the ones that are in that group. So let's see. So, for example, if we're going to say osh again, we're going to say ik osh. That means you read, again, masculine. But if your verb is going to be like, let's say, for example, eat, for example, the verb for eat is wum. So you're going to have to use the chi prefix as opposed to the kaba prefix. So ekwum. So you're going to kind of give an aspirated sound to it. So that's the difference. It means the exact same thing. It has to do mostly with linguistics more than anything else. But just remember, you're going to use the key for the aspirated ones. And remember the bil minor groups, it's going to come up over and over again pretty regularly. Not too often, but it's going to come up pretty regularly. So you'll get used to it pretty soon. So for the feminine, like let's say you're talking, to your sister or your mom or whoever, you're going to say te osh or te wum, for example. You eat or you read. If you're talking to someone, you're saying like he reads, you would say f osh. If you're saying she reads, you would say es osh. For the plural, we read, you would say ten osh. For the plural, second person plural, meaning you plural, like a group of people, like say you're talking to a group of Sunday school servants, for example, you're going to say like you read the Bible regularly or something. You're going to say titin osh and pi evangelion or titin osh and pi bom. So titin osh. And then for saying they read, like you're talking about a group of people, but saying they, you would say se osh. Se osh. So that's basically, again, the paradigm that we're going to be using for the simple present tense. So it's pretty easy. The verbs don't change at all. Only the prefix changes, and the verb does not change. The only kind of caveat is the kappa and the key. If the verb is going to start with one of the bil minor letters, you use the key. If it starts with any other letter, you're going to use the kappa. So that's basically it to summarize the homework and we've got the bil manur letters listed here for you in the homework assignment too. So you can see that it's listed here for you. The kappa becomes key before the bil manur group. So part of the homework, again, is to learn and memorize these verbs. And it's important that, I may or may not have mentioned it before, but for each lesson it's good to try to learn and memorize every word in the previous lesson, because the way that this book and course is designed is that the words and things that are introduced are going to be used in the following lesson. So if you're not learning all the words and verbs from before, it's going to make it really difficult. So it's nice to try to memorize all the things that we've been doing. So let's go over these words so we can know what they mean. These are all verbs. So ischai, it means to write, like to write a book or something, or to write on a piece of paper. Osh, we just took, means to read. There's several other meanings for the word osh. It can mean to make a promise, for example. But the main definition we're gonna use for now is just to read. The next word or verb is wum or uum. Uum means to eat. And just as kind of like a side note, some people have theorized that, like, when you hear Egyptian parents telling their kids like kul mum or kulimum or whatever like that, the people have theorized that that comes from this word uum, but it has a prefix to it. I'm just going to type it here. Ma, wum. Ma is an imperative command. So basically, I tell people, think of this as like an exclamation point. So you're telling someone ma wum. That means it's like saying eat with an exclamation point. So some people believe the word like mum, or kul mum or whatever, it means it's the imperative form of to eat. So it's just kind of interesting that we may possibly have these kind of Coptic words in our vocabulary that we don't really know. That we don't really know we're Coptic. So means to drink. Everybody, I'm sure, probably knows this verb from the liturgy, and also uum. When Abuna says chi uum evolem chit and chi su evolem chit from and chit from the liturgy, that's what these verbs are. Uum means to eat, so means to drink. The next verb, menre. This is actually not the proper form of it. It's an error that this author of this textbook made. This is what we call the pre-nominal form of the verb, but actually the basic verb is actually going to be may. May means to love. So menre is a conjugated form of it, and this has to do with what's going to be following it. And we're going to get into all these things again in detail later. But menre means to like or love, but the actual basic edited verb is going to be may. The next verb, the opposite, like if you have a thesaurus and you're going to look up the antonym for may, it's going to be musti. Musti means to hate. Musti. The next verb that we have that we want to memorize is ti. Ti. Ti means to give. So kind of another sidebar thing again. Some people believe we do have this again also in the Arabic, colloquial Arabic and colloquial Egyptian Arabic. Ti means to give, and for example, like when you say someone Iddini, like Iddini al-Muftah or Iddini al-Kitab, or give me the book or give me the key or whatever. It's believed that it comes from ti, ni. So ti means to give, and ni, we're going to go over these in the future, but means to me. So ti, ni, it means give me, and that people, that's where Iddini comes from. So it's another thing that we that again, it's believed that it does come from Coptic that we do have that's survived into the Arabic. Chi. We just kind of talked about a part of the liturgy where we see chi comes up when Abuna says like chi or chi su. Chi means to take. So it's basically two verbs in a row. Chi, take, eat. Or chi, take, and then su, to drink. So chi, when one thing that I want to mention too, the imperative, this basic form of the verb, it also goes as the imperative form of the verb. And what does that mean? When you tell someone you're telling someone walk, or eat, or drink, or whatever. For example, if you just say chi means like take this. Or if you just say the verb by itself, means the imperative form of eat, for example. So this basic non-conjugated, non-varied form of the verb, it also acts as the imperative. So that's why when Abuna says like chi, it means take, eat, just like it says in the liturgy. Or chi, su, take, drink. So it's two verbs back to back. The next one, hemsi. Hemsi means to sit. So if you tell someone hemsi, means you're giving them the imperative to sit down. If you say like ti hemsi, that means like I sit. You can say on a chair, like ti hemsi hijan pitots. We already took tots. Ti hemsi hijan pitots. That means I sit on the chair. Or ti hemsi hijan pikahi. We learned pikahi means the ground. It means I sit on the ground. Ti hemsi hijan pikahi. But if you're going to tell someone a command, like an imperative command, like sit down, you're going to say hemsi hijan pikahi. And that means like sit on the ground. It's like it's like a command for someone. Or hemsi hijan pitots, sit on the chair. So you can see how it's pretty easy to construct these topics down.
Hey Joe, we have a question.
Yeah.
So the question says, so I give would be TT?
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, that's exactly correct. So I'll type it here. So someone is asking, how would you say like I would say like TT, and like let's say I'm gonna say I give the book the book to you. TT MP Gom no. I give the book to you. Or yeah, I mean that's basically like an example. So TT. So but that's exactly correct. The first T is the first person singular present tense. The second T is the verb to give. So that's where you get TT and pigom na. I give the book to you. Sorry, that keeps popping up. Okay, so that's correct. Very good. The next verb, nav. Nav means to look. So you can say like titin nav epi evangelion, or you look at the Bible, or I'm just going to think of some random words, or yeah, a question.
We have a couple questions.
Okay.
So one of the questions was responding to that previous question, saying, I think it's anokti. So I guess the question now is, what's the difference between saying TT or anokti?
Yeah, because anok, it's a pronoun. So if you wanted to include anok, it's not always mandatory. It can be included, but it's a little bit redundant. But it's typically not. It's typically not used. But if you said, for example, like anok, TT, and pigom na, you would have this pronoun. But if you had it without the T, anok, T, and pigom na, it's just grammatically incorrect. It doesn't make sense in Coptic. Because you're you have no way of knowing whether this is the verb or what tense it's in or whatever, or if this is the first person simple present tense. You wouldn't know. So just grammatically, it just doesn't make sense in Coptic because this is not conjugating anything. It's just a pronoun. So if for whatever reason you wanted to emphasize this, and it's done in Coptic to emphasize that it's I or me that's going to give the book to you, then they would add the anok in the front and say titi anok titi pigom nak. So that's kind of like saying like I, but it's emphasizing the I give the book to you. So that would be the difference. So you can't just say anok ti pigom nak because that doesn't make sense. But you can say anok titi pigom nak is the same as just titi pigom nak, but it's emphasizing the I part of it because you're adding the pronoun for emphasis. Okay. So,
thanks. And we have one more question about the word eschai. Is eschai, is it already with the prefix for the third person, or is it without and may still need a prefix?
Yeah, you would still need to add on the prefix. So, for example, if you're going to say she writes books, that's an easy example. You would say eschai in han. That's in hangon. Eschai in hangon. Because this is the verb, so just because it has that sima there, that's part of the verb. So you would still need to conjugate it. So just as if you were going to say like if eschai in pigom or ik eschai in pigom or ten eschai in pigom, that's saying we write in hangom. I'm sorry, we write books. But yeah, if you're going to put the third person feminine singular, es eschai in pigom. So it's that double sima in the front, but you have to think of it, even though it's attached, think of it as two parts. That's the best way to think of it, even though it's technically attached and prefixed to that verb. Es eschai in pigom. Okay. These are very good questions.
No more questions. You can go ahead.
Okay. So nav, I think we went over, means to look or to look at something. The next verb, shari, that means to hit. Like tishari em piro. Remember, ro means the door. Like I hit the door. Tishari em piro. Or tishari em pikahi. That means I hit the ground. So shari means to hit or strike. Are is the verb that means to keep or preserve something. But in this case, because this book, it's kind of meant for scholastic purposes. They use study and learn because that's conceptually means to kind of keep or preserve. But we see this verb pop up quite a bit also in the liturgical books. Like Abuna says areh eron, or we say areh eron khinpiknati, or something like that. That means to keep or preserve, but again, conceptually also can mean to study or to learn. So those are some important verbs. We'll run across these ones quite a bit, so it's important, like I said, too, as we go along to keep learning and studying these verbs till we memorize them. And you'll see that we're going to keep seeing these things over and over again, so these very common verbs are going to become kind of like second nature to us, hopefully, over the months. So we're also going to introduce some more vocabulary, some things that, again, we've had some of these like nim we've taken before, for example. But a lot of these vocabulary words we're going to see. We come across these quite a bit in whether in church or the Tizbeha or other places. So it's going to be really important again to kind of grasp. So it's a lot of vocabulary words this time, but it's good because once we build up our vocabulary, we're going to start being able to make a lot of sentences very easily. So let's just again go review some of these words. P-oik. 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 Everybody knows this because we all here in communion, the deacons sing pioik. Pioik and te'evon. P, the definite article, oik, bread. Pioik, the bread. P, alom. Alom is cheese. And sometimes you'll see it with a hori in front, but it's most commonly alom. So it'd be P, alom, means the cheese. And what do I mean by the hori? Sometimes you'll see it written like this, halom or alom. It's the same thing, just like I said, in ancient Egypt, they didn't have Webster's dictionary for Coptic, so things were spelled slightly differently based on whatever region or district or however or the author. Like I said, they didn't have like a dictionary with like very standardized spelling, but this is just kind of one of the exceptions. The vast majority of things are spelled pretty similarly. P, eroti. Eroti means milk. P, eroti. That means the milk. And there's one of the doxologies for St. Mary. It says, Are ti eroti erof. That means are is, we're going to find out the past tense for female, you. And then ti eroti means to give milk. Erof to him. He's talking about St. Mary, how she was nursing Christ. It says, Are ti eroti erof. So eroti is milk. P, off. Means meat, like like a steak or something. It means meat or flesh. P, off. Tift. We all know about the story of the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. So you'd say Pitif the snav, the 2 fish. Tift is fish. And I think we took this vocabulary word when we were studying the alphabet as well. Ma'u. Ma'u, we all know this. Again, it's a very common word that we see all over like all over the liturgy books and Tasbihah. Like for example, from the hymn Chen Oshot, we see Pi Ma'u, the water. Pi Ma'u, the water. Pi Afot. Afot means, they put here the glass. It means the cup or chalice or glass. Pi Afot. So again, we hear this quite a bit in the liturgy. Pike afot. Ke is something that we'll talk about later. Ke has a couple different meanings. It means it can mean other, but in the term pike afot, it means also. And we can talk about it later once we get to the word ke. But pi afot means the glass or the cup or the chalice. Ekikleseia. Ti ekikleseia, that's the Greek word for church. It's been incorporated into Coptic, ti ekikleseia. And I know people debate whether or not you're going to pronounce ik or just ekkleseia. I would just follow what's used in your church for the hymns or recordings and stick with it that way, because it's just another one of those things of contention that I wouldn't get too caught up with. Really, what's more important is to learn the words and the grammar first before we start arguing whether it's ik or ikik. Okay. Chen. Chen is a very common word, like chen b'Christos. It can mean in, at, by, through, with. Has a lot of variability or flexibility in its meaning, but it's used to to link something. So we're going to see some examples. But for now, we can learn the most basic meaning is probably meaning in, like. Chen tiri. Tiri is the room. Chen tiri means in the room. Evol chen. Evol chen means from in something. Like, for example, in Bescha we say, in the prophecies we say, like for example, Evol chen pidoxodos and temoisis. That means from in the Exodus of Moses, when we're reading the prophecies, we say Evol chen. Evol chen means from in. Here they just put from, but it means from in. Because chen means in, and Evol means from. So from in, Pidoxodos and Timosis, the Exodus of Moses, the book of Exodus, basically. Is going to mean to, or at, or towards something. Like, for example, we have the verb nav. So to give someone a commandment, you're going to say nav e piro. That means look at the door, or look towards the door. Nav. So let me just move this down a little bit. Nav e. Let's see, this keyboard's a little different. Nav e piro. Look at the door. Or nav e piro. Look at the book. Okay, so e means to or towards something. It's grammatically called a directional adverb. So e means to, at, or towards. Yeah. Was there a question or no?
Yeah. We have a question. It says jinkim or not, and I assume they're asking about eklisea.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those things that you'll see written with if you're talking about eklisea, they're depending on the author who wrote the book, if they prefer eklisea as opposed to eklisea, there'll be jinkim. Again, it's something I don't have an exact answer for. I usually personally use eklisea just because that's what's used in most of the hymns, just to avoid any confusion. So I just kind of stick with that just for avoiding any issues. But if someone was going to say eklisea, that's completely okay. You know, that's where the word, for example, you know, in Spanish we say iglesia. You know, that's where the same word comes from. So there's a very good chance that, you know, maybe in ancient Egypt or in Greece or whatever. Again, I don't know Greek. We're gonna have Greek lessons at some point. We can ask the Greek instructor, but it's possible that it was not pronounced twice. So I don't have the best answer for that. Usually, I just stick with ikik because that's what's used in most of the hymns in general. But you wouldn't be wrong either way. And we can ask when it's time for our Greek professor. We can ask them at that point. So the next one is igen or he-gen. And I'll tell you how to know the difference. Ignore this chi. This is supposed to be like a comma, I think, but it came up because the font carried over. So this is supposed to be just a comma. But i-gen or he-gen. Gen is an ancient word for head or the top of something. So i-gen means to the head of, you know, blah blah blah, whatever we're talking about. I-gen. So it's gonna be a directional adverb. He-gen. He means upon. So upon the head. It's kind of when something is more stationary as opposed to something is actively moving. So something is actively moving, whereas this is kind of a stationary on or upon. Does that make sense? So we'll get a bunch of examples of these later. So again, the main thing is to learn igen or he-gen means on or upon, and etymologically, gen is an ancient word for head, and I is the directional adverb, and he is the directional adverb. This means to or towards, and this means upon. Igen or he-gen. The next one, ye. Again, some people think that this is also still survived in Arabic, but it's originally Coptic. Ye means or. You say like di yadi, you know, this or that, or hoa yahiya, you know, him or her. Ye means or, so it's really easy to remember. Ye, and again, we come across this quite a bit. Allah is a Greek word, but it's used quite a bit in Coptic. It means but, beauty. Allah means but. Like, but I told you something. Like Allah agos nakje, you know, that means Allah is, it means but. Nim we took. It can mean and or with, and uwo means and also. And we'll see the difference between the two in the future. Just to kind of wrap things up here. Unfortunately, this is not showing in Coptic, but I'll type it on the next page. But the particles, it's supposed to be jinkim, ne, and then jinkim, me. The particles n and m are connected to objects as a prefix. And we saw some examples of this, I'll show you again. And the particle I is used with the verbs of the census and other things. So this is what he's talking about. So what does that mean? Like let me go to the other page here and I'll write it out. So we had some examples of these kind of particles that we're talking about. T, M, pigong. M is what they're talking about. Basically, it's just a particle. Just grammatically doesn't really mean anything, but people call it like a linking particle. So it's just a letter that kind of links TT and pigom not. Same thing with N. Es high and hangom not. So that's linking particles. And like he was saying, the author, the is used for like verbs that have to do with the senses, like to see or to hear. So that's why here, nav piro. You want to say nav piro, you would say nav piro. So look towards the door. Look towards the book. Nav pigom. So that's what the author means by, in general, the verbs of the senses that relate to the things that like to see or to hear or to touch or something like that. In general, it's going to have this particle as opposed to the M or M. So it would be like this. Okay. And so that's basically it for today's lesson. I know it's kind of a lot of mostly vocabulary, lots and lots of vocabulary this time. We've got all these nouns and particles and adverbs, etc. to learn. And then we've got this long list of vocabulary, but hopefully it's not too hard of a list because we've come across a lot of these words, hopefully through our church lives prior to this. So the main thing to remember, keep in mind the bil minor group, because that's going to determine whether you use the kappa or the ki in the second person masculine. Let me go back to the table just to kind of point that out. So that's what's going to determine whether you use the kappa or the ki. Ek osh or ek kuom. So it's basically the same thing, but it's kind of an aspirated kind of type of sound. But it's just a K basically. So remember, everything's going to fit into these singular and plural categories. We've got the first person, ti osh or ten osh for plural. Second person, ik osh, ek wum, te osh, titen osh. And then the third person, if osh was osh, or se osh for plural. So that's basically it for today's lesson. We can do a couple examples from our homework assignment.
Hey Joe, we have one question.
Sure.
The question is, when do we use may and when do we use nay? And I'm guessing they're asking about the particles.
It's going to have to do. Sorry. Yeah, it has to do with the prefix of the word that it's attached to. But this is a little bit trickier. It's not quite as easy as like the bil minor group, and you're going to change it from the chi to the kappa, but it has to do with what it's prefixed to. And I don't have a simple answer for it. I know it's a lot of stuff that I keep saying we're going to get used to over time, but it has to do with what it's prefixed to. For example, TT M pigom. If you have the pi, it's always going to be a may. You're not going to say TT N pigom. You're going to say TT M pigom. For the hori, for example, it's always going to be the N. You can say M hangom, you say N hangom. So that's one thing that I don't know if there's a specific rule for it. I'm going to do a little bit of research and see if there's a specific rule, but again, it has to do with linguistics and what's going to, what the subsequent letter is what's going to determine which one. For now, I wouldn't get, too caught up with it, but just kind of try to pay attention to it in some words when you're reading things like at church or Tisbeha or anything like that. Try to kind of pay attention to it a little bit, kind of get a feel for it. I don't know a specific rule, but I'll try to see if I can do some research to try to figure out something to make that a little bit more easy. Okay. And again, we'll just do a couple of examples from the homework, and it's pretty easy. We're just going to translate to English, so it should be hopefully very easy homework. So the first one, T is chai, chen, pi, cash. T is chai, chen, pi, cash. T is chai. Remember, it's not the feminine definite article, but it's the verb. Ti is chai. That means I write. Chen, like I was saying, it has several meanings, but in, at, by, with, through, or not through, but in, at, by, or with. So in this case, if you're going to translate it, it's I write chen with Pcash, the reed or the pencil or the pen. Ti is chai chen Pcash. I write with the pencil. P Romi, the man. If Osh, M P Gom. P Romi, if Osh, M P Gom. The man reads the book. You can imagine this if you're writing in English that there's a he in parentheses, but it's not grammatically in English. It's kind of redundant, so it's typically not included. So you would say the man, he, right? Let's see, what was it? Was it right or reads? Osh reads. Reads the book. So I put this in parentheses so you know conceptually we know it's he, but if you're translating something in English grammatically, it doesn't make sense to say the man he reads the book. You just say the man reads the book, but we know it's the third person masculine singular he in Coptic. So in Coptic you could get a little bit more precision in these kind of things, and that's why, like I was saying before. I think I mentioned it maybe in the first or second lesson, but people, like theologians and scholars tend to revert back to Greek for clarifying things in the Bible, but whenever they can't clarify things in Greek, they tend to go to Coptic because Coptic has ways where you can kind of determine things that you're unable to determine in Greek. So it's a source for scholars and theologians to study Coptic so they can be able to have more precise answers in certain areas when they're trying to figure out things from the Greek text of like the New Testament, for example. So let's do the last example. Ta Soni, my sister. Es Shari, third person singular feminine. Es she hit. Shari means to hit. So my sister, she hits. Means like to or towards. T-shav, the cat. So my sister, she hits the cat, or my sister hits the cat. Would be the translation for that sentence. So hopefully we can get the assignment posted again. If you can, please ask Mark if you can post the last homework assignment so people can do it. And we won't count it late, and if we can put this assignment through, so people can do the translation. This should be a pretty easy one, but then we can get do these translations, and you can see how we're starting to learn how to construct some fun sentences that we can start to use in the future. And that's really it for today's lesson. So if anybody has any questions, we'll give you a few seconds to send them in questions, and then we'll conclude here shortly.
The only question we have, which was asked actually at the beginning of the class, can you post these tables as PDF? And the tables at the top of your Word document. And so I can post them on the lesson page by the end of the next class, by the end of like the diaconate class today. And I already posted the assignment for last week. I made it ungraded since you already went through the answers.
Okay.
And I'll post this assignment tonight as well.
Okay, perfect. That'd be great. Okay. Well, so I guess there's no more questions. So thanks everyone for listening. And again, if you have any questions, again, feel free to send me any questions or comments, suggestions, concerns, through the website in time, and I'll do my best to get you guys the answers. So if there's no other questions, again, we'll conclude. And I know we had, I've got this typed up here. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger so everyone can kind of read along with us. But like I said, I'd like to, if we can conclude each time with the reading or praying of Our Father in Coptic. Again, we'll learn it pretty soon. We'll learn it pretty soon if we keep saying it every time. So it's just nice to be able to do that. Okay, so everyone will try to read together along with us. Chenefran, Mifiot, Nimabshiri, Nimbep Nimmathawab, Kunuti and Ut, Amin. J. Peniot, Etchen Nifiowi, Marif Tuvu, and J. Pekran, Maris E, and Jetikmet Uru, Petehnak, Marif Shopi, Emefriti Chenet Fe, Nem Hijan Pikahi, Pen Oik, Interasti, Mif Non Emfou, Owoh Kaniet Eron Non Evil, Emefriti Hon, Entinko Evil, and Ni Ete Won Entan Erou. Owoh Emperenten Echon Epirasmus, Allah Nahamen Evil Habibet Ho, Chen Bechristos Isos Ben Choice, Jetok Tetimet Uru, Nintigom, Nimpiou, Sha'ene, Entini Ene, Tiro Amin. Chenefran Mifiot, Nimebshiri, Nimbeb Nimmathawab, Unuti and Ut, Amin. Okay. All right, thank you everybody. No frigor, no nagor. Have a good night, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.